What's up, everybody? Nate here. The technology of our planet and our economies growing even stronger throughout the world is all thanks to something called globalization. Globalization allows economies and people and technology all throughout the planet to be seemingly connected without actually having to really go anywhere. And it's the idea that everything in our planet and our world is connected in one way or another. You can't be a big business that does one thing without affecting economies or societies all throughout the country. However, CEO and chairman of BlackRock, Larry Fink, is saying that because of the Russia-Ukraine war, globalization may be shifting and completely ending as we know it. That would mean that our entire world and economies stop looking outward and again start looking inward, which is what they were doing around 20 to 30 years ago. And if this is the case, then we're about to face some pretty big changes in not only the United States, but across the world. Because like I said, everything is pretty much connected, and if you cut that connection, then you're gonna start facing some problems. So today, I wanna kind of react to Larry Fink and his ideas about why globalization may be ending sometime soon because of the Ukraine-Russia war. Before I get into all that, do me a quick favor and hit, smash, or destroy that thumbs up button below, and ring that notification bell too. Both of those two things are completely free, and they help to show me that you like this video and that you wanna see even more just like it. Thank you so much for doing that. Now let's talk all about Larry Fink and his ideas about the end of globalization. All right, so in order to react to this, I want to start showing you some direct quotes from Larry Fink himself. Larry Fink recently said, quote, "The Russian invasion of Ukraine has put an end to the globalization we have experienced over the last 3 decades. It has left many communities and people feeling isolated and looking inward." He also added that, quote, "I remain a long-term believer in the benefits of globalization and the power of global capital markets. Access to global capital enables companies to fund growth, countries to increase economic development, and more people to experience financial well-being." All right, so let's kind of break all of that down one by one. He started off by saying that over the last 20 or 30 years, the entire world has faced something called globalization. Now, globalization is something that you learn a lot about in geography and also economics. Globalization is kind of the big thing that's allowed our entire civilizations to advance over the past 30, 40, and 50 years. I mean, even 100 or so years ago, if you wanted to get something done, it was incredibly difficult to do so. You had to have the resources and the people in order to do that right in front of you. Nowadays, you don't have to do that though. So in order to run a business, you can actually outsource a lot of the tasks that you would normally have in-house. So for instance, you could have people making money for you and working for you across the globe, even though your home base is in the United States. Now, that being said, why exactly does he think that globalization has been lost right now? Well, it's because while it's a big benefit that so many people and so many companies and economies are connected in one way or another, it's kind of a bad thing if one of those countries or companies ends up being not so great. Obviously, I don't have to tell you that there is a war between Russia and Ukraine right now, and because of that, economic sanctions have been placed on Russia, and Russia has retaliated by placing its own economic sanctions on other countries. Russia has so many different resources within its own country, one of the biggest ones being oil, and then wheat, natural gas, and a lot of precious metals. Basically, those are raw materials that companies can then take and then refine to create even more products. Some of those companies happen to be in the United States. Some of them are in Europe. Some of them are in China, and so on. Now, in peaceful times, the United States and companies in the United States can take their money and purchase a lot of those goods from Russia. That money then goes to Russian companies who are then taxed, and it eventually goes back to the Russian government. But it's a little bit more difficult when there is a war going on and the United States doesn't support Russia in its war effort. Now, if we continue to buy all of the same things and don't impose any economic sanctions on them, well, in an indirect way, we're basically funding their war effort in Ukraine. Now, we don't exactly want to do that, so we've pulled a lot of our own economic resources from Russia, and companies that are individual in the United States have done the same thing, like McDonald's, MasterCard, and Visa, and Apple, and a ton of other companies. But according to Larry Fink, that means that globalization is ending because now the United States has to look inward or to other countries in order to get a lot of those resources. Simply put, it's not a global effort anymore because you're kind of cutting off an entire country in order to get those products. Now, going off of the second part of his statement, he says that he's a long-term believer in global economies and globalization. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that globalization is going to be the future of our planet. For a long time, the world wasn't global. I mean, yes, even 100 or 200 years ago, the United States and other countries were getting resources from other places. However, for the most part, people looked at their own communities. They didn't look at the entire world in general in order to get things done. But as society has advanced and as our economies across the world became even more intertwined, globalization essentially took over. Now it seems like everybody is more concerned about what is going on across the world than what is happening in their own backyard. That's not necessarily a bad thing because now you have the awareness to know what is happening, which before you didn't really have any indication. That allows people and consumers and businesses to make better decisions about how they're going to run their companies, and it allows people to make better decisions about what they're going to buy. But more importantly, it means that so much more money can be made because now businesses can expand all throughout the entire world and they can take a bigger pool of resources and pay even more people, which gives money back to those respective countries and then they can spend it however they want to. He mentions in this article too about how he's been speaking to his clients at BlackRock recently and they don't want any of their money to go to Russia. So now all of the investment money and capital money that they've been putting into Russian markets is all of a sudden cut off. And eventually that means the Russian economy is also going to take a hit from that. That eventually is going to slow down globalization because with less money circulating throughout our own country and countries throughout the world, businesses and companies are going to have a lot less money to spend, but they still have to run their companies, so they're gonna have to try to find ways to make money that is a little bit more closer to home. Now, when I kind of think of globalization, I kind of think of some pros and cons. There's a lot of pros to it. You've got a lot of money that's circulating throughout the globe and a lot of communities that could really use some of that cash. However, there's also the big con that now that you're interconnected everywhere, if something falls through the cracks, then everything is affected. It's no longer just one business decision. One business decision could actually be thousands of micro business decisions on top of that. I mean, literally, think of one product. Now, think of all of the decisions that had to be made in order to get that one product on the shelves for you to buy. There's the actual production of the product. So these companies actually have to find a location either in the United States or abroad to build some sort of factory. They have to go through all of the laws and regulations in order to build that factory. Then they have to find people to actually work in the factory. After that, and the product is actually made, it has to go across the planet. So that can go over a freight ship or it can go through air. Once it gets to wherever it needs to go, it then has to be shipped by land to that particular destination. That is just a really simple example, but think of all of the thousands and millions of products there are all throughout the world. I mean, think of just one Walmart store. Okay, so we all don't want to think of a Walmart store, but just humor me for a second here. There is literally hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of products in one Walmart store with thousands upon thousands of different products that come from all different places in the world. And that's one store and one location. But the problem is if globalization starts to take a back seat and you have less companies willing to take their business overseas and into other economies, now you're going to have a world economy that is shrinking, and you're going to have businesses and companies and countries that have a lot less influence over one another. They're all going to be secular, and that can be a pretty big con because now technology and the amount that we collaborate throughout the globe is also going to start shrinking. Once again, the reason our entire planet has exploded like it has is because of technology, and because there is so many more people on the planet, we need to have better technology and better brains in order to kind of find solutions for all of these people. Without globalization though, you have a smaller pool of people to pick from because now the United States isn't looking at people across the globe to solve its problems. It's only looking at people in the United States. And while that might be helpful for a little while, somebody across the globe might have a way better plan. can. We can't take that pool of resources anymore because countries aren't exactly playing nice. Now, Larry Fink also mentions the behavior shifts that we're starting to see because our world economy is becoming a lot less global every single day. Because globalization is taking a hit, in his opinion, that also means that the exposure people have to other countries is also starting to shrink. I mean, think about it. If you literally go nowhere in the world and you never turn on your TV or look at the internet, then all you're going to know is what is in your current community. And in a lot of ways, that's not a bad thing. But when we start to have issues or something comes up that you need to have other experience or knowledge for, you're not going to know how to handle it other than what you've seen in your own world. That could mean that the world becomes a lot smaller. And like I said, that has its benefits. I think people really don't look close enough at their own local communities. Everybody wants to be global, and they all want to look at these worldwide problems that we have. Those issues definitely need to be solved, but in my personal opinion, what you can do to start to solve them today is starting to fix the issues in your own community. If everybody starts to focus on the issues in their own community, then we can start to build a better world from the ground up. I mean, for me, there's not really much I can do on a federal or global level. I have a very small influence over my own community though, because I actually know who is running the city. You could start making these small changes today, which grows education and grows our workforce so that way people are better in the future. However, we still need globalization because if we have no products and no services coming in from overseas, then that means everything is going to have to be made here at home. Simply put, we're going to have less things, and the things we do have are going to be expensive. As people pay more for things, well, they're gonna have to make more at their jobs, and as they make more, they can buy more, and as they buy more, we're going to have less, so companies need to make more, but that comes at a cost, which is going to be trickled down to the consumer. Things are going to cost more again, and the entire cycle continues pretty much perpetually. So there is a distinct need for globalization as our entire economies are so connected in 2022. Now, I think what Larry Fink is most worried about here is that the Russia-Ukraine situation is going to get even worse. Obviously, right now, it's just Ukraine versus Russia. However, if countries surrounding Ukraine or China or some of these other countries get involved, well, now we're going to have a globalization issue because now you have a ton of different countries not able to do trade with one another. Businesses are going to have to shut down or reallocate their resources, so they're not going to be making money in those economies. Immediately, those economies are going to take a hit. And secondary, that money isn't going to come back to the United States, so our economy is going to take a hit too. So like I said, globalization works as long as everybody is on the same page. But as soon as you have to start taking countries out of the world economy, then you're going to start having some issues. And according to Larry Fink, this could just be the start of a bigger problem. Now, what I will say is there is a lot of countries on the planet and there's a lot of money to go around. So what I personally think is going to happen is just a big shift in the way we do globalization. Obviously right now, Russia holds a lot of resources, but if they continue to get cut off from everything and this war doesn't escalate, well then Russia may no longer be a world superpower, but we're still going to need those resources. So what might end up happening is the United States relies on other countries. There's a lot of countries out there and a lot of countries that are looking to start gaining a lot more influence and work with us. So it may take some time, but we might just start going to some other countries for all of the same resources that we were getting from Russia. Now, it won't be exactly the same and relationships are going to have to be built, but over time, I think it will be healed. I think our world is way too connected right now for globalization to ever completely disappear. I mean, technological advances just in general mean that we're always going to be connected. I can literally talk to someone across the world right here, right now. You could not do that 20 or 30 years ago. So our entire planet has come this far, and I think we're going to continue to go even further. In fact, I think world economies are going to become even more intertwined because people are always going to want another country's money, and they're always going to want another country's goods and services. Things are going to change over time, and who produces what is also going to change. It's really just going to come down to the creativity of countries and companies in order to make globalization continue forever. But now I want to hear from you on this issue. What do you think about Larry Fink's ideas about globalization and how it might soon come to an end? Do you think that he's spot on here and that the Russia-Ukraine war is going to cause a massive shift in globalization? Or do you think that globalization isn't going anywhere anytime soon and it's probably just going to have some slight changes here and there over the next 10 to 20 years? Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all of the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting out updates 7 days a week over here on this channel, and I've actually got another update ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.